Relationships ain't easy, and unfortunately, there's nothing you can do to change that, but you can enjoy them more. And if you approach them the right way, they can be more than worth it. So I'm John Sanders. I'm husband, father, brother, sharing the mistakes and successes that I've made in my own relationships so I can help you with yours. If you're single, struggling to get a date, or if you're married and you feel like you're a million miles away from the spouse that's sitting right next to you, I got something that's going to help you. We're going to have fun, you're going to laugh, but most importantly, you're going to learn something that's going to help you take your relationship to the next level. Or if you don't have a relationship, you'll learn something to help you get one. Let's jump into the podcast.
Welcome to another episode. Starting off with our new segment. That's probably why you're single. So if you have group pictures for your profile pic, it's probably why you're single. So I got this one from my wife talking about some frustrations she had and she's heard, especially when dating using a dating app, is guys who only have group pictures. The women are just left to try to guess which one you are. So it usually ends up being a swipe left. Quit using group pictures. You and some of your friends, or if you have the money, pay a photographer, but go out and take some pictures of just you. That way people can know what to expect when they meet you. And they're not frustrated trying to figure out who you are in the group pictures. So if you're still using group pictures for your profile pics, it's probably why you're still single. Now, here's another one. If you are 28 and you're still showing the pictures of you from when you were 21, that's probably why you're still single. I don't want to get too into this because this is the fun segment, but I get what people are trying to do. They're probably out there saying, well, John, you told me first impressions are important. How you look is important. You need to present yourself in the best way possible. Yes. But you also need to be, I don't want to say honest, but you need to be honest. You need to present yourself in your current best way. Don't present yourself where you think you were the best in your life. Those are two different things. See, the issue is you're trying to increase maybe how many people swipe right on your profile and they show interest. You like how you looked at 21, so you put those pictures up. The problem is people are going to eventually meet you in real life. And they're going to look at the picture, and they're going to look up at you, and they're going to look back at the picture, and you probably see some disappointment on their face because you're going to look different. It doesn't even mean you look worse necessarily. It just means you're not going to be what they expected. So the people who would be looking for someone at age 21 are not going to want to date someone who's 28. I mean, in general, because that is a pretty big gap, especially at that age. And then people who would actually be looking for someone at age 28 are probably going to pass up someone who looks like they're 21. So you're actually doing yourself a disservice, and you're wasting people's time. You're actually increasing your chances of getting to a first date and having to see someone look disappointed when they first look at you, when all you had to do was take some recent pictures. Now, if it's a 1-year-old picture or something like that, that's cool. But 7 years, that's probably why you're still single. So, speaking of still being single, let's move into today's topic. One way to get out of the single game is to set a target. So what does that even mean? Because if I think about it, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say set a target. So I'm explaining to you. But I'm explaining to you after a while. Let me explain some other things first. So when I say set a target, for now, I'm going to explain it later, like I said, but for now, just think of it as a specific type of list. There seems to be a split view on whether or not you should use a list or not. So a lot of people kind of come to the conclusion like, are our lists bad? Are our lists good? From the ones that I've listened to, and most of the main ones, they actually seem to be trying to point people in the same way. Like they're trying to get people kind of focused on the right things. So the people who say you need to have a list, keep the list, live by the list, it's because they're also the same people who are explaining how to correctly make a list. And so they're like, if you correctly make one, this is going to be a tool that you can use to help you throughout dating and help you pick a good husband or a good wife, or even help you know who a good person is to continue dating. And then the people who say lists are bad, normally what they're talking about is they're trying to help realign or rebalance people who have created a list, but they did it incorrectly. So because they did it incorrectly, it ended up being a tool that actually hurt them during the dating process instead of helping them. And so they're usually when they're saying, tear up your list, throw away your list, that's why. It's because it's actually something, because you did it wrong, that's hindering you and keeping you from actually finding the person of your dreams. So now you're probably saying, okay, so lists aren't bad if you do them right. So how do I do them right? Just remember this phrase, set your target. So I keep saying set a target. You're probably wondering, you got to explain that, John. So I'm explaining it. So when I'm saying set a target, I want to use a different phrase than just create a list, because the words you use, they're powerful, and you can say the same thing but differently, and it can have different meaning behind it. And then it can help you when you actually have to put that phrase into practice. So creating a list, sometimes we tend to have this thought where, or at least I'll say I've seen this with a lot of people. They create a list and it's almost like they've made an order at a restaurant. I think I'll have the oven roasted chicken. I'll get the sweet carrots with mashed potatoes. And then if you can put the gravy on the side. Okay, thanks. And you hand them the menu, and then you just wait while someone else does all the work. They cook the food, make it look nice, and then they bring it out to you, hand you the silverware, everything. And then you just eat. Oh, I got what I wanted. When you have a list, sometimes people can become a little passive with it. It's almost like, well, I made a wish list. I sent it into Santa, so now I can just sit back. And so one of the things I want people to understand is you can get the man or woman of your dreams, but there's some work that you have to do. When you set a target, there's a lot of action implied in that word. So for one thing, just pretend like you're an archer and you want to practice shooting. So as an archer, at some point in time, no matter where you go to practice, you had to set up those targets, like physically set up the targets. You had to find a good spot. You had to buy targets, and then you'd have to go out. You put them on a stand, you nail them to a tree, whatever. You put them up on a wall. You're in an indoor range, or maybe they're paper targets, whatever. But you have to physically go out and set those targets up. And then you have to identify, which ones you're going to hit when you're shooting. So in dating, you need to set your target. Again, in that example, there may be multiple targets out there, but you need to aim for one if you want to hit the bullseye. If you have 30 targets out there, you can't hit all 30 with one arrow, with one shot. That's impossible. You have to take one target at a time. So set a target. And when I say set a target, this is what I mean. You're going to figure out the things that you want in your future spouse. And that's going to be your target. So yes, you're probably thinking, that sounds exactly like a list, John. It is a list, but you're setting a target and you're thinking about it a little differently. You're realizing that there's going to have to be some action behind this, and you're not just ordering something at a restaurant and someone else is going to do all the work for you. So you're setting a target that you're going to have to find and that you're going to have to aim for. Now, another thing I like about this analogy is archers, we all know they're human. They don't hit the bullseye every single time. And when you first learn how to shoot a bow and arrow, most likely you're not going to hit the bullseye. You'll be lucky if you even hit the target. You know how the normal bullseyes, there's a circle in the middle, and then there's, 4 or 5 bigger circles around it. And so that makes up the whole target. Starting off, you're lucky if you even hit the target. So it takes some practice. So again, that's why I like this analogy. because you don't find the man or woman of your dreams the very first person you meet. It doesn't happen. There's trial and error involved. There's getting hurt. There's pushing through. There's learning new information. And then there's getting back out there. So if you go back to the archery analogy that I'm using of setting your target, if you miss the board completely or the target completely, what are you supposed to do? Well, if you want to hit the bullseye, you make adjustments. So you see, okay, I missed the target completely, but I missed it too high and to the left. So now that you have a target, you can make wise adjustments. If you're too high and to the left, then you can try to aim lower and to the right. So anyway, now that you've set a target, when you miss, you can figure out why, and then you can make adjustments. And if you keep making adjustments, the right adjustments, long enough, you're going to eventually hit the bullseye. So just think about this. When a teacher creates a test, they always create an answer sheet, and they use that answer sheet to grade everyone's paper with. Now, they don't have a separate answer sheet for every student in the class. If you haven't set a target on what you want in a future spouse, it's very easy to get into creating an answer sheet or a different answer sheet for every single person you date. So for instance, in this example, the person's really fun. Every time you guys go out with just you two or your friends, they're the life of the party. So now all of a sudden you've changed the answer sheet to get 100% is mostly based off of how much you are the life of the party. And so what ends up happening is after the test, or we'll say a date, you're thinking, oh man, they made a 90 out of 100. That was good, because the way my answer sheet is 75% of your points come from we the life of the party. And then if you date someone else, maybe it's how good of jokes they tell. And then of course, now that's the 75% of the test comes from how good your jokes are. The problem is your target keeps moving, and it's moving to make each person seem better than they may actually be. So you need to have an answer sheet that everyone is graded off of. And that answer sheet doesn't change no matter how many people you may happen to grade, no matter how different they may be. Because you may be in a class where there's 2 really bright students who get 100 all the time, and there's also 5 or 6, maybe I'll just say not focused students. We'll just say not focused, and maybe they're missing most of the questions on all the tests. So the teacher doesn't change the answer sheet to help one of the other ones. The answer sheet's the answer sheet, and it stays the same. So in the same way, you need to create the characteristics and traits that you want in your future spouse. So this is what goes on your list. This is how you set your target. So let me give you some practical examples. So if you're setting a target, again, it's the characteristics and traits that you want in a future spouse. And these are things that A, just genuinely make a good human being, and B, things that you want in your life. Now for me, I'm a man of faith. So when I was setting my target, the things that make a good human being are just the characteristics and traits that I wanted. A lot of them I found first in the Bible. And you'd be surprised, most of the time, that's what majority of people say is a good human being. Here's some traits that you can use when you're setting your target. Someone who genuinely loves you. They don't love the money you make. They don't love maybe that you're famous. They don't love how people think better of them because they're dating you. They genuinely love you. So they know your weaknesses, your strengths, and they still love you. Having someone who genuinely loves you. Having someone who enjoys being with you. Like, you want to be around people who celebrate you, not tolerate you. We've all heard this before, but it's true. It's important. You want someone who, when you walk in the room, their face lights up. Nobody is hoping that the person that they spend the rest of their life with is going to start frowning or stop smiling when they walk in the room. Like that's, no one's hoping for that. You want someone who lives a peaceful life. You know, they aren't causing a lot of self-inflicted drama. Like we all know those people. For some reason, they're always making these choices that get them in this craziest predicaments. It's always drama. They're always yelling at somebody. Someone's always yelling at them. They're always trying to get someone back. Always. I mean, you would think after a few times of getting someone back, you would have been even, but no, there's always someone to get back because apparently there's always someone doing them wrong. You don't want a lot of drama in your life. That's stressful. They live a peaceful life. Trust me, you want peace. You want someone who's patient with you. Nobody's perfect. Nobody is perfect. Not you, not your future dream spouse, no one. They're going to have some patience with you. You want someone to be respectful. You want people to be faithful. You want to live your life with this person. You know, it'll really help if they were faithful. If they weren't sleeping around with people behind your back. That would be a plus, at least in my book, if they're being faithful. You want someone who has a healthy image of themselves. You know, you don't want them to think too highly of themselves, too low of themselves, but a healthy self-image. And you also want them to have a healthy view of you. You don't want someone who's looking down on you all the time and has this attitude of, you better be just thankful that I'm even allowing you to date me. But you don't want the opposite, where they put you up on this pedestal and treating you like a god or something. Like you don't want that either, because you can't have a fulfilling relationship with someone who sees you too high or too low. So they need to have a healthy image of themselves and of you. You want someone who is in control of their emotions. This is important, especially for women looking for a man, because being in control, a man who's in control of his emotions is less likely to be abusive. So I say that normally men are stronger than the women. And so it can be a very dangerous situation if you get with someone who can't control his anger. Now, obviously, the same things goes for men looking for a wife, because you don't want someone who can't control their anger. Although your life may not be in danger as much, it's still going to steal your peace. And you have to remember, if you're planning on living the rest of your life with this person, peace is so important. It's so important. Like you can't put a price on that. So someone needs to be in control of their emotions. You also don't want someone who is up one day, down the next day, feel like they're in love with you in the morning, but then at night they can't stand you and they hate you and they're just all over the place. You want someone who's in control of their emotions. And then you want to see maturity. 3 areas: spiritually, financially, and physically. Again, me, I'm a man of faith, so spiritually is the most important thing for me. But even if, that's not as important to you, you probably want to link up with someone who you can agree with on their views spiritually. But I think everyone should be able to agree with financially and physically. You don't want to, be blindsided. You get into a marriage and then you find out maybe you had great finances. And then all of a sudden the person you marry, they got 40, 50,000 in debt, and they're always out shopping, buying things they don't need, just making things worse. They have no plan to pay off the debt. It's just going to be with them forever at this rate. You don't want that. So you want to see someone who's showing maturity financially. So that may look like, maybe you talk about a budget, and maybe they explain their budget. I'm not big on people asking personal questions about finances first, second, maybe even third date. But you can ask things like, describe your budget, or how do you budget? That's different, because you can budget without giving specifics. You can say, I followed Dave Ramsey, and this is a quick little story about transitioning and why I transitioned. Like that's something you can say on a first or second or third date. And it's not getting too deep and personally. But it lets the other person know that you are financially mature, or at least that you were mature enough to realize that you needed help. You found a book or you found a program or something and you're working through it. Maturity physically, I've talked about this in other podcasts, but the main thing is just loving yourself. Loving yourself enough to want to enjoy life for as long as you can and as freely as you can. You know, no one knows what tomorrow's going to bring, but the best way to do that is to eat healthy and to be physically active, to exercise. You want to see some maturity there, because obviously if you want to live the rest of your life with somebody, hopefully it'll be longer than shorter. And so loving yourself enough to take care of yourself physically is the best way to do that, or increase your chances of that. And again, if you want to know about maturing spiritually, for me, it would be, it's like, do they go to church on their own regularly? Again, nobody is perfect. So even the most fit person, the most holy of holy person, the richest people, they're always going to have room or some area where they can grow, even in their strengths. And of course, we all have weaknesses. So again, with maturity, you want to see evidence of self-awareness, self-assessment, and then gradual growth. And that's a sign of maturity. Okay, so these were the characteristics and traits that you want in a person. But you can also, after you do that, because I consider that the foundation. You want a good person. That's a foundation. Then you can put your preferences on top of that. Do they want kids or do they not want kids? And I guess that's probably is going to go along with if you want kids or not kids. But that's a preference. They live in an outdoor lifestyle. They love to go camping, love hiking. That's a preference. It's not, they don't have to be a good person, but that's a preference that aligns with your core values or maybe the things you like to do. They love reading books. Maybe you are a movie expert, or you watch every movie that comes out because you just love them, whatever. Those would be preferences. So how do you set your target? You get the characteristics and traits that make a good person, that make a person someone who gives you the best chance to have a long, fulfilling life with them, to have the best marriage possible. And then you add in your preferences. Now, I like to stay away from, physical attributes. And I think with preferences and physical attributes, my advice to everybody would just to be open and just put on the target that you are attracted to them. And I think if you do that, it'll keep you from being like, oh, his hair is not this color, or, oh, her hair is not that color. She doesn't have these color eyes, or I'm only looking for a guy with biceps this big. I'm only looking for a woman with measurements like this. And I think it'll keep you from being superficial if you're just like, you just put that you want them to be attractive. They should be attractive to you, but don't start overlooking people who may be amazing people, because there are a lot of people out there. Once you get to know them, you see these characteristics, you're having fun with them, you guys are vibing, and you find yourself wanting to spend more and more time with them, they get even more attractive. So let's just say you wanted somebody with curly hair. That was the preference you put in there. Well, you may meet somebody with coily or straight hair who's actually turns out to be amazing for you, but you would have missed out on them simply because of the texture of their hair. You want to make sure your target isn't causing you to miss good people over things that in the big scheme of things don't really matter. How curly or straight someone's hair has little to no effect over how much joy, peace, excitement, romance that you experience with your future husband or wife. I can safely say none. So now you know how to set the target. You're probably wondering, John, what was your target? Give me a good example. You seem like you know what you're talking about. I want to hear what you have. My target, for the most part, I really had two things. Sorry, let me correct that. Three things. I wanted her to love God first. I want her to love me second. And before I even consider those two things about her, I wanted to be attracted to her. Honestly, that was the three things that kept me going. Now, those three things can break down into more details because obviously they love God first. You could break that into different things. Well, how do you know they love God first? Love me second. Part of that was she needed to be respectful, forgiving, because I knew I was going to make mistakes. She needed to be willing to learn how to show me love and learn how to teach me how to love her. So if you never read the 5 Love Languages book, you need to read it. But anyway, it just explains how we all have different ways of showing and receiving love that make us feel the most love. And when you get into a relationship, if you know these things about the other person, it'll help out so much because you'll be able to make them feel loved. And if you can explain to them and teach them what makes you feel loved, obviously you're going to feel more love too when they start doing that. So that was important to me. Then I wanted someone who was fun to be around. And that was important. I wanted to have fun with my wife. And then some preferences that I had, I live an active lifestyle. So I wanted someone who also lived an active lifestyle. And I wanted someone who could enjoy, simple things like watching a movie on the couch, going for a walk, just simple things. And then, I consider myself funny, but I know that there's some people who don't, and that's okay. I mean, they're missing out. But I want my wife to think that I was funny. That was part of us having fun together and laughing. So I wanted her to think I was funny. And so thank God I found someone who does that. So, and I set my target and I found it. So remember, set your target. Don't just create a list and hope that it's going to happen. Set a target. Any dream, any prayer, if you don't put action behind it, it's not going to happen. Nothing just works by magic. You have to put some action behind it. So set your target, figure out the characteristics and traits that make a good person, that makes someone you would want to be with for the rest of your life, to be your future husband, future wife. And then figure out your preferences that you want to add on top of that. Think of them like the icing on the cake. And then every time you meet someone, whenever you're going out on dates, grade them against that. And if, you're shooting too high into the left, aim lower into the right. Don't create a list, set a target. So if this has been helpful to you, please hit that like button. If you haven't done so, subscribe. If you're like, you know what? I know someone who needs to set their target. Send them a link. This will help them. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you guys have a good rest of the day. It's 6 a.m. right now on a Saturday. So I have the whole day ahead of me. This is how much I love you guys. I actually got up at 4:30 and I went through my routine. So anyway, hope you guys have fun and be looking out. I've decided to start putting my podcasts on normal podcasting venues, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. So be looking out for that. In the next few weeks, I'll announce them on the podcast. But again, if you have questions or you want to add something, put it in the comments. You guys have a great one, and I'll see you later.